28 days, huh? I've never seen this film before, and that's saying something, because I've heard of this film for years, and then there was a sequel called 28 Weeks Later, which, kind of like stirred the bubble in the kitchen. I was like, all right, cool, cool, cool. But, never got into it. Now there's a trequel called 28 Years Later, which we'll get to that. But for right now, let's look at the original. Thankfully, or depending on how you want to see it, Sony bought the rights to Fox's Searchlights, which means that now Sony, the same people who are out there selling anime to us for the third time in movie theaters, now have the rights to these guys. And they brought it back to theaters, which was great. We actually liked that one. And they allowed me to use the AMC movie stub instead of making me pay for the ticket, which is what they do with the anime stuff. Anyways, amazing, because obviously they're trying to build a pipe for the next one. But when I tell you that I had no idea just how on the spot and how influential this specific, I wasn't say vampire, zombie infection film is, blew me away. Because up until this point, all the tropes that were kind of like taken for granted, I can see the inspiration. And when you start with like, just simply put, how the Cillian Murphy character wears a red shirt, uses a baseball bat, and how that is a direct reflection to High School of the Dead. Yes, that fucking series or anime or whatever you want to call it. It was like a mind-blowing moment of like, oh shit, this is the film that everybody got freaked the fuck out by. Not just necessarily because there's zombies and there's evil people. It's the fact of how fast these things went to shit. We think about The Last of Us. We think about any generic, like Metro is probably one that came beforehand, but even then, that is a London-inspired universe. So we come around and we show how London has to deal with this outbreak problem. We kind of pick up on how, I don't want to say metal, but like how like rocking the vibe is from the UK in that specific moment in time, which is a very, like, I want to say almost inspirational moment. I do feel like the essence of rock, and I'm just talking out of my ass because I wasn't born in London at this point, but the essence of like rock came from like this dirty ass emotion of like frustration and like maybe disappointment. A little bit of anger, yes, but that's more of like a heavier metal sound. I wouldn't say disappointment. And I'm taking this straight out of like Elton John and shit like that. Just the way those songs and musics came to be inspired from the time of that person's life, and how they had to experience these moments, this time frame in England, and how that kind of angstiness kind of just builds up to this moment. But it's a moment of free fall. The moment where the needle has popped the bubble, and now we're left with our results. 28 Days Later hits all the right notes when it comes to a zombie outbreak type of end of the world situation. Number one, we did it to ourselves. It is by the consequences of our actions and by the lack of, let's call it, faith in mankind or hope or inspiration, that we have pushed ourselves to this brink. And in this brink, we find the results of our actions. And well, wouldn't you know it? Infections, outbreaks. And this is just in the UK. No, Manchester area, I believe. They make a big point of the people in the city are even questioning themselves, like, what if they're just lying to us and the rest of the world is already okay, but because of our lack of government and our lack of support for the common people, we, the common people, are so fucked. Number two, the monsters are not the worst of the ending. We know very well, we've seen it before, that when shit really hits the fan, some people, or maybe most people, or maybe all people, right, will throw away whatever mask or whatever pretentiousness they are hiding in the sake of survival. It becomes a moment of certain people will do certain actions because they believe certain beliefs must be followed to reach a desired conclusion. And it's in this kind of shared hive mentality that we see, I don't want to call them the dumbest, but the shittiest ideas thrive. The ideas that are less worried about what happens to us and focus more about what happens to me. And while I won't say that we don't have those moments or that we don't need those thought processes in our minds, they're essential to survival again. It really has something to say when we lose that sense of responsibility or upright citizenship or even faith in the common man. For good reason. We've seen things hit the fan before. We've been lied to. Shit, half of us have been cheated on. But it's pulling through that despair as I stare into the Danganronpa poster and pulling through and finding those families, those group of people that we've accepted into our own circle because we understand that deep down we are all damaged, broken, hurt, transformed, robotics, Autobots, Decepticons. We all have emotions, and putting our shit aside to maybe not baby each other, but to put our hopes and dreams and our inspirations on something more than just me is what pulls us out of that situation. So yes, High School of the Dead was inspired by 28 Days. Yes, there are serious topics that get discussed that from the beginning I knew it was gonna be a setup. But the fact that, like, it makes sense as to why you would even try to go for it still, even in the midst of this destruction, is a testament to how rough things can be, right? So, it is a classic for a reason. The camera work is so 90s, but again, to its extent, that sort of timepiece really captures the elements of what grunginess and what rocky angst was brewing from that time, to the millennia, when, let's say, America was on the up and up. And hey, Well, in just a couple of weeks, we will get the third installment to this film. 28 years later, which we actually got to get a sneak peek of, which is why I'm kind of talking about this now. But very interestingly, as I have mentioned, I do believe the whole humanity kind of topic stemmed from this specifically, showing our darkest ambitions and what that could be represented as in a universe without laws and where power is given to those with, let's call it a fastest finger trigger or disciplined finger trigger or an armory or whatever. We are teleported to a end after world era, right? Like think of straight up The Last of Us. Aaron Taylor Johnson is gonna be hanging out with his son in this wilderness of the zombie apocalypse 28 years later after this chimp outbreak. So what I'm putting together, and again, you don't have to fucking believe it or anything, we're just speculating, is that Sony, PlayStation Sony, is now getting the Last of Us story plot, and we're gonna see how they incorporate that into the 28 years or 28 franchise. And that's, I don't know how to feel about that. If we, like, look, I'm all for inspiration, right? And like, it's kind of cute that this thing might have inspired The Last of Us, and then The Last of Us is now inspiring 28 days later. But when you're telling me that the Sony Productions is in charge of this, then isn't it just simple enough to like put the one and one together? And what does that say for movies going forward? If we're at a point that, for the record, I don't know if the sequel hit as hard as the first one, because I don't think I've heard as much as praise for 28 weeks later when as opposed to 28 days later. But where are we at a point where a company, a giant company, decides that, hey man, we need to make something, a product. Why don't we just get that one franchise, that one dead franchise that everyone enjoyed but was good for what it was. Let's drag that from the grave, bring it over to 2025, and then we already have all the production values of The Last of Us Season 1 and 2. Why don't we add Aaron Taylor Johnson, since we already paid for him to be our Craven, which fucking sucked balls, and now we're stuck with him as a contract to make The Last of Us film. And then rebrand that and sell that to the movie fans as the 28 Days Later sequel. Again, don't worry about me. I'm just being me. But if we go into that movie theater and we come out of that movie theater going like, yo man, that was The Last of Us. And I don't know what to say, man. I don't know. Like, Sony is in an interesting place right now. And it's really dumb to talk about it because they literally have everything going for them. Anime, movies, video games, they still have TVs, audio systems, products, right? They're not as focused as selling things to people anymore. Right now they're making their money off of iPhone screens and movie filming products. Yes, but are we really that far gone that we now just have to keep on regurgitating like these products just to make a quick buck? And yes, I do realize that we just talked about Lilo and Stitch literally minutes ago, but Yeah? Or is there hope? Is there something to look forward to? Tom Cruise. But yes, 28 days later, 28 weeks, which I don't think I'm gonna watch. If I can get inspired to actually, if someone tells me that it's actually a good movie, someone out there, please let me know if it is a decent, good movie. If it is a good, decent movie, then yeah, I'm interested into watching it, and we'll go from there. But 28 years later is gonna pop up soon, and from what it looks like, it just looks like The Last of Us, but with Aaron Taylor Johnson and with a young male son instead of Ellie. So whatever that means, it could be a great story. It could definitely be God of War, Kratos, and Atreus, but in The Last of you know what I mean? It's just so. What are we doing, man? What are we doing? And it can't be that obvious, can it? But we'll have to wait and see. Uh, the Sony PlayStation universe, cinematic universe, is among us, which is another. But it doesn't matter. But hey, I genuinely enjoyed this. The theater was fairly packed for a rescreening of a classic film and in standard definition. It really looked like it was the 4:3 original broadcasting of what this was supposed to be, and that room was fairly packed. So that tells me that there is actual genuine respect and hype for the 28 days later title. It's just, are we seriously gonna take all that goodwill and either shit all over it, or maybe try something creative? Yes, inspired by Sony PlayStation, but creative. And you know what? Isn't that what we can hope for? Creativity, a little bit of love, a little bit of spice, and a little bit of sugar. ¿Por qué no? But hey, that's where we're at. But for now, I think I'm gonna stop him because the lagginess. For now, let's get ready to talk about some Tom Cruise, eh? The man, the legend, the savior, Tom Cruise. Yeah, hit that.